After reflecting on how learning theories and second language acquisition theories influence in classroom dynamics, we need to understand interaction and as that process that generates engagement and leads to a mutual communication for mutual understanding. In that way, if we want to promote a classroom dynamic that students participate and they include a collaborative learning environment, we need to take into account the social cultural perspective and the social constructivism. Because if we want to promote interactions in the classroom, we need to understand that teachers and students are not the distant ages. They must be interacting and connecting each other during the activities. And that way, now from my position, I consider that social constructivism is the most ideal theory for my point of view. Because as Vygotsky said, knowledge is not only constructed, it's co-constructed. That is why, from my intervention this semester, I remember one activity that I did with my students. Basically, they had to create a poster. That poster must include images, phrases, and sentences in English. Of course, many students say, "Teacher, I don't know how to create sentence. Teacher, I am not good at drawing." But that was the idea because maybe he is not good at drawing, but maybe his classmate is good at drawing. In that way, I promote like a collaborative learning environment. And it was a good activity because they were sharing knowledge, they were participating together, and of course, as teachers, me and my CT, we were monitoring the process because as we understand from this perspective, even if the student work independently in their process, we as teacher we need to monitor that process and support that process. Another reason to extend from this theory is from my own experience because 4 years ago, I remember my teacher Elkin. He was our philosophy teacher and our art teacher. And basically, his strategies were amazing because he was promoting always during the year collaborative learning community. In that way, he always talked to us and he was like saying, hey, talk with your partner and work with your partner because from the difference we can create knowledge. And as I was saying, maybe we are not good at something, but maybe our classmate is good at that. And I remember that one strategy that he implemented during the classes was the Groupal shirt. I mean, we created like a shirt with a logo that represents our group, and it was amazing because from our interest, we create something that represents us as a group. So every time I plan an activity, I always think in his strategies, and that is why, from social cultural perspective and social constructivism, as EFL teachers, we can promote active participation and active role from both. Also, we can promote motivation. We can motivate our students. And that is why I agree with those perspectives. As a conclusion, I understand that if we, as EFL teachers, if we want to promote collaborative learning, if we want to create a good classroom dynamics, we need to take into account that interactions is not only for students, it's also for us as teachers. And that is why to be a teacher is something amazing. Because if we know and we have clear ideas and we promote interactions, we can create something amazing.
After thinking and analyzing the implications of both learning and learning language theories upon classroom interactions and its effects on classroom dynamics, and after actually thinking about my ideal classroom dynamics and how the interactions looks like, I decided that my preliminary theoretical standpoint is humanism as a learning theory and the affective filter hypothesis by Krashen as a learning language theory. So, why humanism? Here, teachers are seen as facilitators. Here, the teachers care about the well-being of the students, about how they feel, what are the needs that they have. They try to give meaning to the things that they are teaching. So this is more student. It is more student-centered, and I really love that. In a way, when we're talking about the affective filter, basically Krashen says that the negative feelings or emotions such as anxiety, low self-esteem, low self-confidence, and lack of motivation, those things may hinder or facilitate the learning process. I connect this a lot with humanism because humanistic teachers care about those things, about the student motivation, the students' capacity. They try to see the potential of the students, and they care about their environment and how those external things affect the learning process. So I believe this is core in my teaching practices. Maybe it's because when I was still a student, I had a teacher who always, well, who will always come to class to tell us that we were not good enough, that we weren't achieve great things in life, that we were not smart, and all of that words really affected. And I was always insecure. I felt always that I was going to fail on the exams or on the classroom. I would never participate because I was afraid that the teacher will make fun of me if I made a mistake or something. So this really affects the approach I had to the class and the way I learned. And now, as a pre service teacher, I care a lot about this. I care a lot about how the students are feeling, how they interact with each other, if they're happy, if they're hungry, what is that that they want to learn, what are their hobbies, the things that they are interested in. And I focus a lot on the effort they make. No, the outcome of the activity, but the way they try to achieve things. And this way I try to, well, basically reduce that affective filter so that they can learn and that there is nothing that I can actually take control of, that there is nothing of the environment or their motivation. So I believe that this is really important for the students' learning process, and this is what I focus the most when doing my practicum, for example.
So, after reflecting and thinking about the influence that the language learning theories and the learning theories have in the classroom dynamics, we have to consider that first, classroom dynamics, it is something that derives from the interaction, and the interaction in this case is conditioned by the language learning theories or the learning theories. So, in order to provide my standpoint about what are those theories that I can perceive as the ones that have a better and positive impact in the language learning process or the learning process in students, are the social constructivism and the humanism. We know that the social constructivism mainly focuses in the interaction between individuals, that they help each other in order to construct knowledge. So interaction in this case plays an important role because, as it was previously talked, we know that interaction is that mutual action between individuals that are in the classroom, and that interaction, that action itself, is going to lead to mutual understanding and mutual communication. So we know that we as humans, we don't learn by ourselves, or in this case, we learn in better ways when we have another person that also helps to shape that learning. We can receive information, or we can take the other as an example in order to construct our own knowledge. And also the humanism, because we know that the humanism in this case, it focuses in the interest, the emotions, the capacities that have students, because humanism doesn't see the student as someone that is aimed to be fulfilled with knowledge. No, humanism sees the student as a human being that actually has a background in terms of personal background, emotional background. So humanism in this case sees the student as an important individual in the classroom. It is not only the teacher but also the student. So from my practicum, I can say that when we work, or when we provide the classroom as a safe space, the students to share, for the students to be heard, it is going to boost classroom dynamics, as we know that classroom dynamics is always trying to maintain engagement. So if we work from the interest, from something that they like, it is going to maintain the engagement in terms of the students. They are going to feel attached about the class, about the topic, about the knowledge that we are trying to provide. And the social constructivism, because from the collaborative work, we can see that the student is going to improve his knowledge. And in order to conclude, those are the learning theories that I consider that have a more positive impact in terms of the knowledge that the student is going to get, and the interaction that happens between the individuals that are part of the classroom.
When I think about my ideal classroom dynamic, I can no longer avoid thinking about my own teacher identity. Regarding this, I believe in constructivism at some degree. I believe that learning is a construction, an active construction of students that takes into account their prior knowledge, their perceptions, their background, and these factors that in a way are going to be the foundation to the construction of their knowledge. In my ideal classroom dynamic and that mutual understanding, I believe that students are going to create some connections with their prior knowledge and the new information that is going to help the development process of their learning. In addition, I also take some elements from social constructivism. Vygotsky states that learning is a social construction between individuals, between the own person, between the environment and the objects. I also believe that learning is a social process. When people interact and are engaged in social activities, I believe that that interaction is going to lead to a process in which people are going to create meaning. and that meaning is going to permeate the learning processes of individuals. Taking into account my own teaching practice, my ideal classroom dynamic, and the component of interaction, I want to highlight scaffolding that, in a very general way, it refers to how we learn when we interact with the other. And I think that is something that I want to promote in my classroom. Now, taking into account our context in which English is a foreign language, I want to highlight the comprehensible output hypothesis. According to Swain, students learn when they realize there is a gap in their language, and this theory is focused in the output, in the production, and that is something that I want to highlight. In this specific context, as a teacher, as a future teacher, I believe it is important to promote in the classroom the communicative competence, that production with the language. I believe that the language is an excuse, and we teachers must develop the process of production of use of the language. Swain states three functions of output, and I believe they are essential in the process of production. For example, taking my own language learning experience, when I made a mistake and then I became aware of that mistake, and then I tried again in order to produce the correct message, that helped my learning processes and my production. So I think it is essential that teachers encourage this process and its development, especially in this context, in order so students can develop the communicative competence and produce and use the language in their daily life. I think that is the meaningful learning that I want to provide in my classes, in which the classroom dynamic and the interaction are going to be some resources or some mediums to create a meaningful learning for my students.